Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host Mitchell J. Rabin, and we're very glad that you're joining us again today. Today we're going to have another very interesting show. We are seated with Alta Reynolds, who is the author of a book called Cycles, A View of Planet Earth, written with Lynn Wright. And Alta is from South Africa, from Johannesburg. She's led a very interesting life, and most lately she has come across a series of maps that were illustrated by an architect also from South Africa, and she'll be sharing with us some of the details about these maps and the implications for us as a humanity at this point in history. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me here.
It's my pleasure. Absolutely.
I'm actually from Shishlowe, which is a very unusual sounding name in South Africa, in KwaZulu-Natal province, not Johannesburg.
Oh.
Sorry about that.
I sit corrected.
I know you weren't aware of that.
No, I'd never heard of the town before in my life.
Few people have, believe me.
And I surely can't pronounce it.
Don't even try. We even battle with the pronunciation.
Yeah, that's right. It should also be said that Alta's original language is not English but Afrikaans, and this is probably language that is spoken less and less as we move on in time. Is that correct?
Yes, it is, although certain groupings within our society are still trying to uphold that language, which naturally is to be expected,
yes,
because to keep a culture going.
Indeed, indeed. Well, we're glad to have one of the speakers of this language in our studio.
Thank you very much. It's a great privilege and honor to be here with you.
Good, Alta. I'm glad. Now, if you could, just give us a little background. This is an unusual name for a book, Cycles, A View of Planet Earth, and the work that you've described to me is really quite extraordinary. Could you give us a little history as to where the maps come from and how you yourself got involved with them?
Good, certainly I'd love to do that. Now, the maps themselves were drawn by Hans Ludo, the gentleman who you mentioned, the architect who lived in the Cape Province, South Africa. He was retired at the time when he drew these maps. It's 39 maps on Earth changes, plus 2 accompanying diagrams that try and explain these maps to a certain extent. Now, unfortunately, when Hans died in June 1997, he did not leave any writings or notes behind. And
just the maps?
Just the maps. And they are quite large maps as well, to in excess of 1 meter by 1 meter, some of them. Drawn on very flimsy paper, painted and with watercolors and also with pencil, in remarkable detail, absolutely astounding detail. But then he was an architect and an accomplished map drawer. So he had obviously been prepared for what he had to do. That's the way that I feel about it.
In fact, you said that he is an architect, but he's also an accomplished dowser.
That is quite correct. When he went into retirement, he got involved in some very interesting pastimes, according to his family. And one of them was divining, pendulum divining, and I understand possibly also water divining, where he was able to pinpoint mineral deposits, both oil and minor diamond deposits. Very interesting little anecdote. At the time when South Africa was seeking its own oil resources, he had actually written to our then Minister of Environmental and Mineral Affairs and advised him that there's a particular point off the east coast of South Africa in the Indian Ocean where they would find our oil, which is off Mossel Bay, as it's called. And they ignored him. They thought he might just be a bit of a crank. But in the end of the day, that's exactly where they found our oil deposits. And they're now busy exploring that particular deposit and extracting oil from there.
Interesting.
So I get a feeling he had a pretty good track record in terms of his dowsing skills as such.
Yes.
So
which makes the implications of the importance of the maps all the more poignant.
Exactly, yes.
So please go on.
Yes, I actually asked his family, how or why did he draw these maps, given that there were no notes or records left behind. And they weren't sure themselves. They assumed that it was through his dowsing skills. They did not see him as somebody who had possessed certain special psychic abilities or visions or anything of that nature. He was not that kind of man. They did not see him as that kind of person. Pragmatic, down to earth. And so that is Hans Ludo.
Did he speak with his wife or his children about the project, the map project?
No, that is what I found very unusual. He was actually lived in quite in seclusion in the time of close to his death. He wasn't married at the time, I understand. He suffered a stroke 6 months before his death. Now, I did not include that in the book in respect for the sensitivities of the family. And the maps were, the 39 maps and the 2 diagrams were drawn in the 5 months prior to his death.
So there's some possible relationship between the stroke and the effect it had neurologically and his divining, let's just say, or being inspired to at least draw the maps the way he did.
Well, Lynn and I believe that is the case. We looked at the maps, and several other people have looked at the maps too, and we are of the opinion that something did happen at the time when he underwent the stroke. And through Lynn's research in the work of PMH Atwater, who is an American author, she's done research on this, and she speaks about near-death experiences and traumatic, life-changing experiences which can cause what we can call a brain shift, where the person can develop certain abilities, which we believe are natural abilities, which we have just suppressed with time.
Or has certainly not developed.
Exactly. And he was then capable of, in fact, seeing these images of the Earth spanning this vast period of time from 4 million BC through 2000 AD up to 15,000 AD.
39 maps.
39 maps in total. Now, these maps, we believe, are the first maps on Earth changes emanating from South Africa, if not from Africa. From my own research, I've seen that most of these kind of maps originate from the United States of America. There's a host of websites who can point you in the right directions as far as these maps are concerned.
Gordon Michael Scallion is one of the better known.
Yes,
there
indeed.
are several.
Yes, indeed. We also believe that this is the most comprehensive set of Earth change maps that have ever been created. It spans the whole globe over such a vast period of time, also with possible indications of Lemuria and Atlantis. There are 16 maps of Atlantis in total and 15 of Lemuria.
That's more than a slight indication.
Yes, and more than that, yes, you're quite right.
Yeah.
So
you're saying that, and they were named as such by him?
Yes, they were named as such. Atlantis 4 million BC, 3 million BC, 2 million BC, and so it comes to the present time. He in fact started drawing the
And how about Lemuria?
Lemuria, he starts from 1 million BC.
1 million BC?
Yes, 1 million BC.
So Atlantis predated Lemuria, according to that?
That's an assumption, although many other readings say that Lemuria predated Atlantis.
That's why I bring it up.
Interesting.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that just because he had a map of Lemuria in 1 million BC doesn't mean that that's when it began.
Not necessarily.
Right?
Not necessarily, right, yes.
So it's not necessarily chronological as in sequential of what was first and what was later,
yes.
But maybe more of a snapshot of what Lemuria looked like for whatever reason that entered his consciousness at 1 million BC.
Yes. I like
Is that a reasonable?
I like your thinking, and I think that's a very reasonable deduction to make.
Okay, okay. Good. Please go on. This is fascinating.
Yes, where were we now regarding
Well, you said
yes.
that he drew maps that seems to substantiate the existence. If the rest of what he was drawing is accurate, it lends great credibility to the geographies that he outlined of Atlantis and Lemuria. Highly controversial geographies at that.
Yes, yes, indeed.
So it's interesting. So then, please go on. So you were saying the maps go back as far as that, and then up through.
Yes,
2000.
Yes, it goes through to year 2000, which of course will have the most interest to viewers and readers of the book.
Sure.
Because it affects the here and now. Although we believe that when he indicated the year 2000, he didn't indicate the year now 2000 as such, but perhaps round about the year 2000, because the next period that he has drawn maps for is the year 3000. So there's quite an expanse of time. It could be related to the year 2012, which is in respect of the Mayan calendar.
Sure.
It could be the year 2003. Many people believe that it could reflect the year 2003. So
what particular changes suggested would be then?
In round about the year. Well, the changes that are reflected in the year 2000 map, that's what I'm trying to explain. I'm just trying to, people might look at the map and say, oh my word, these changes, are they going to take place now? How are they going to
this year?
Yes,
this
as in this year. That's why
But no, I understand. Yeah. There's a range.
Yes, that's.
But is there some particular thing that suggests that there will be changes in 2003, as in with 2012?
Yes. Well, do you mind then if I talk about my interpretation of the maps?
Oh, not at all. I welcome it.
All right, because I think that could explain that a bit more. Now, initially, I just wanted to present the maps with a brief introduction, and the people who are assisting me, Lynn Wright and others, in writing this book. And I can just add here, I became an author and publisher by default. I made 2 trips overseas to the United Kingdom last year to try and find researchers and publishers who would be interested in spreading these maps to a wider audience. And there was considerable interest, but I realized that the conventional process was going to take a long time. I would only get this book out by the end of, or the 3rd quarter of the year 2000, which I felt was not going to be appropriate.
Yes.
And the sooner the material got out, the better. So I returned from the last trip and decided I will have to do it myself. Okay.
Let me just let everyone know that we are speaking with Alta Reynolds, who is the author of a book called Cycles, a view of planet Earth. And it's involving Earth changes, going all the way back to 4 million BC. All the way up through 15,000 AD. And it's from South Africa, and it might be the most complete rendering of maps from anywhere, really, on the subject of Earth changes. Please go on.
Thank you very much. So that was a situation. So that's how we ended up publishing this book ourselves. And again, well, I won't go into this to the experience involved in being first-time published as an author.
Sure.
But
only because the material itself is so important that I know the viewers would like to know that.
Yes, yes.
And your interpretation.
Correct, we'll come to that. So it was published in February 2000, and I was put in a spot where I had to provide my own interpretations of the maps without having the benefit of Hans Ludo's thinking behind how he drew these maps.
Oh, surely, because he passed on in 1997.
Correct, yes. And in our research, Lynn and I's research in trying to decipher what the possible message in these maps could be, we came upon some very interesting events. Commencing from August 1999 and going through to May 2000, which is gone, and almost like a 9-month gestation period, if you consider that. And we came upon cycles of primarily as celestial, planetary, and natural nature. Commencing, and do you mind if I just mention some of these key events that we identified?
No, please.
Commencing with a total solar eclipse on the 11th of August 1999 at 11 minutes past 11. All these 11s cropping up for those who are interested in numerology. Then going from there to the astrological Grand Cross on the 17th and 18th of August, when the convergence there took place, which interestingly coincided with the Turkish earthquake, plus another earthquake under the sea near Japan. Yeah, so that was the astrological Grand Cross.
And those happened around the 17th or 18th of August?
Yes, that's right. I think the Turkish earthquake was the 17th of August, but I stand corrected. But it was over those 2 days. And there were aftershocks as well, too, in any event. Then we moved into the a super bright moon, full moon on the 22nd of December on the solstice. Because of the position of the moon relative to the Earth and Sun, which was last that bright 133 years ago.
Sure.
Yes, you can see the pattern developing here. Then we had the first total lunar eclipse of the 21st century. That was the 20th of January this year. Then we moved on to the March equinox, the 20th of March, also associated with a full moon, and the advent of the age of Aquarius, which many believe.
Yes.
Then we went, what next then?
May 3rd and 5th.
Pardon?
May 3rd and 5th.
Yes, well,
or
yes,
1st through
yes,
5th?
whichever dates. I picked up various dates, the 3rd, the 5th, the 10th of May, but it seems that in the end of the day that the consensus was the 5th of May, the planetary alignment with the 6 planets, the Sun and the Earth's moon. Very much speculated upon. There were predictions that major catastrophes were going to hit the Earth on that day, and we are still here, obviously. And
there are always extremists.
Yes. But I still, however, believe that certain major changes have commenced and are still taking place as a result of the alignment and associated with all these other events. I do know.
And the changes are often energetic or, let's say, etheric in nature, and they don't necessarily find physical form for a while thereafter.
Yes, yes, I agree with you on that. Then, of course, we have the solar maximum, which has reached its peak around April and May this year. I don't know if all the viewers are familiar with what a solar maximum is.
I'm not.
Oh, okay. Well, to very briefly, it is when there is the maximum in sunspot activity.
Oh.
Okay. And these are...
That's what I feared it might be.
Yes, and these are plotted and charted by your solar physicist.
Sure.
And they actually predicted that there would be above average sunspot activity this year with this particular solar maximum.
Physicists have.
Yes, they have predicted that. So that there is a factual scientific base there. And these solar maximum operate in a cycle of roughly 11,2 years. The last solar maximum was in March 1989. And the effect of that was, at the time, that the power grid in Quebec province, Canada, was outed. So that caused quite a lot of disruption. It has been proven that a solar maximum can affect communication systems on Earth, plus climate and volcanic and seismic activity. Yeah. So in this one, certain researchers believe this is going to be the most severe solar maximum that we would ever undergo. And it isn't just concentrated over 2 months, it's a build-up, naturally. That's how these cycles go. So you see the relevance of the cycles that we're talking about. But it hasn't even ended with that, it's still continuing.
But there are always lunar eclipses, and there are always a number of these things. Granted, there are cycles to all of these, like the May 1st, May 5th thing, and 133 years, et cetera, et cetera. But what is the relevance of all of them happening in this concentrated? What's the interpretation? Because this is just nature doing her thing, if you will. Solar activity is a regular feature of our solar system. Solar flares, etc. So what is the implication then? Is it that such activity is occurring within a concentrated amount of time that will mean something then to us?
Yes, I believe so, and both Lynn and I believe that. It's the cumulative effect. In isolation, I would say these events would not have that much impact. For example, we believe that the astronomers who said that the May 5 convergence of the planets, the alignment, would have no effect whatsoever, perhaps ignore the fact that we have a convergence of many events and cycles taking place in a very short space of time. Again, the 9-month gestation period concept, like something is going to happen, and indeed is happening already.
And what do you think that is?
Well, yes, I only found the answer, I think. I'm just going to venture this, and
Sure.
I'm sure other people will have their own views. Again, in the book we invite people to present their own views. We're just trying to interpret something, and I'm certainly not a geophysicist, climatologist, or a geologist, anybody whose person has been trained and qualified in those fields.
Understood.
And we invite people who have greater knowledge and understanding of these matters to look at these maps and see what they can interpret from it and what their views are.
Sure. What's yours?
My view is, and I actually...
People will. I'm not worried.
All right. It came upon after the book had been published, and it was triggered off by some books I was reading on the second coming. You know, there's a lot of synchronicities in life that lead us into certain things, and one gets these little notions. You know,
Yes.
that interests one. Let's go and look into that. And books very often give you the clues to this, or other people. And it could have been one of those kind of events. I became interested in the concept of the second coming, and I started thinking about what has been taking place now. And please, I can't quote to this now, but they talk about the second coming will be associated with a darkened sun, a reddened moon, and then there'll be a sign in the sky or the heavens or a star in the heavens. And I thought, well, hold on, we've just had a darkened sun, which was a total solar eclipse last year, followed shortly by a reddened moon, because the moon in the total lunar eclipse goes reddish orange. Now there's a missing element here. Now, is it possible? Until there it was presented in a very strange way. Through the NASA Science Service, there's a free subscription service that you can subscribe to, and gives you some very useful information on what's happening up in the skies. Because my sense of it, our signals are coming from up there, from the heavens. And we should actually start doing some very intense stargazing and start paying attention to what's taking place up there and also around us, because we have to consider what's happening on Earth too. The book is about a view of planet Earth.
After all.
Yes. And I might need to just quote here from something.
Sure.
But let's see how far we can go. It was called, yes, I am going to do that. If you can just bear with me, I have to.
Okay.
So I can give you I'd like to give some
Okay.
information as accurate as possible. This was a snippet that came through on the 16th of May. And this is what I downloaded from the internet. The heading is A Christmas Star for Soho. For those who don't know, and I did not know at the time, Soho is the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory. And they talk about a close encounter between Venus and Jupiter. Now, what they are saying, and those who are interested in this can obviously go into this website, and this is not a plug for them, but I just found this is very interesting material, and I found most of my material coming from the source. And it says that basically Venus and Jupiter, and this is probably with the alignment now starting to disperse, that Venus and Jupiter have moved very close to one another. And let me give it to you here. For those who are technically inclined, they will know what is meant here. It says here, let me find the right this. Venus and Jupiter will pass less than 0.01 degrees apart at 10:30 Universal Time on May 17. And unfortunately, the close encounter would take place just 7 degrees from the bright sun, making it impossible to see with the naked eye. So we could not see this, but Soho could see it, and it took a photograph of it with all the relative positions.
But I have to move you along because we're almost out of time.
I understand.
And the point that we want to convey to our viewers is, what is the meaning of these data?
Okay.
That's what's most important.
All right. Let me give that to you as what they have interpreted it here.
Okay.
It says here, this close conjunction has already been compared to the 2 BC conjunction of the same planet is often identified as the Christmas star reported in the book of Matthew. And there's a book that's quoted here in The Star of Bethlehem, an astronomical and historical perspective.
Interesting.
So, and that was on June 17, 2 BC, Venus and Jupiter joined in the constellation of Leo, and so it continues.
Got it.
So what the implication could be, and I say we're just talking about possibilities and how you interpret this,
Sure.
is that we could have another Christmas star. Could it be the sign in the sky?
Mm-hmm.
Could it be the second coming? But a second coming, not what we expect.
But
the second coming could not be one person coming as a savior,
sure.
but it could be the raising of consciousness within
Among all people.
among all people, to become aware, pay more attention. Yes.
We've been talking about this on A Better World for years. Exactly that, without the fine-tuned data. So I appreciate your coming to share it. In fact, we've been talking about the second coming and the Messiah as spoken of in the Judeo-Christian lineages, traditions, as well as in other teachings, wisdom teachings, as being the collective consciousness of people, of all sentient beings, in fact, coming to another level, that it's not one person, that it's all beings, which in a sense forms one being. And that recognition is what we're up to now.
It's music to my ears.
You've come onto the right show.
Thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure to be here.
We're not finished with you yet.
Oh, I thought we were.
I want just, if you could, because I want to come back to the maps.
Yes.
And project forward to, you brought us up to around 2000, maybe up to 2012. What does the Earth look like, according to Hans Lude's perspective, when we get into 3,000, 5,000, 10,000, and bring us further to 15,000? But you only have 1 minute to do so.
I shall do it very quickly then now. Understand?
That's a challenge.
Yes. I think it's a message of hope. The world isn't going to end. What it's showing is a planet in constant evolution. It's going through its natural cycles. We are the inhabitants. We can't just stop the world and get off. We have to do something about it.
As Anthony Newley told us a long time ago.
There we are. Yes, yes, indeed. We have perpetrated, in addition to these natural cycles that makes the Earth quite vulnerable, and particularly at this point in time, we as a human species have perpetrated many iniquities on this Earth.
Indeed.
We have abused the planet. There's global warming. We know the effects of global warming. That is proven. It cannot be disputed.
Our audience is very aware of these inequities.
I'm so pleased about that. Overpopulation, pollution, a number of things we note, and the thing that has concerned me a lot has too been nuclear experimentation, especially where it has been underground or undersea.
Indeed.
Where we have actually made the crust more vulnerable. Incidentally, they also, at the time of the planetary alignment, there was a report in Geology magazine, I don't know how many people are aware of this, that they had found major cracks in the mid-Atlantic ridge, which could cause 20-foot high tsunamis, battering the eastern coast of America. So just to give you an idea of how vulnerable this planet is at the moment. Last week I was in Ottawa, Canada, and we experienced an earth tremor there, and also a small tornado. Now, these are unusual events for Ottawa,
Very
from what I
unusual,
understand from the
unusual.
locals there. So things are taking place, and we had better start paying attention to what's happening on this planet. Otherwise, our survival as a species, and all the other species for whom we are responsible and we were so inclined to forget about, we are
in jeopardy.
Exactly.
We are out of time. I thank you
yes.
very much for sharing with us your insights, intuitions, interpretations, and the work that you've done in bringing the maps available, making them available, and we'll post a way for people to find out about how they can get it if they would want it. All right?
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
It's really been a pleasure, Alta.
It's been a great pleasure being here too, and I've enjoyed the visit to you, my first time visit to your country ever so much.
Fabulous.
Thank
Thank you. Well, you've got it here on A Better World, what the future will look like. Thanks so much for joining us. Please stay tuned and come join us in the following weeks. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and we look forward to seeing you soon.